Hello, everybody.
All right, we've got Coach Justin Hamilton. Ham, I don't know if you wanted to just go to questions or if you had something off the top.
Yeah, I mean, I just off the top want to thank our players, the coaches, the medical staff, everybody involved in giving us a season this year. Obviously, it was a challenge for Virginia Tech, a challenge for every school that's out there playing football, but it was something that there was a lot of learning, and I think there was a lot of things that we'll look back on and feel good about as far as development of young men and as far as what we were able to do as the season went on our side of the ball and with our team. And then a great way to finish the season. Really proud of those guys for battling till the end. And as I said, just really feel like there was a bond that was built. I guess anytime you go through tough times for a common cause with people, that's what family's about, and that is what this season was about. So look back finally on that, and hopefully we'll be able to continue building on it going forward. So with that, I'll just open the floor.
And did you want to start?
And Justin, you were a player who had a hand in building this bowl streak to what it was. What are your thoughts on players opting out and decided they didn't want to play the bowl game this year?
My thought was I was going to support whatever the players chose. I think it's the right thing that the players got to decide because as tough as we've all had it, they had it the most tough throughout the entire season. And I think that it was good that they had the opportunity to discuss it and they had some time to think about it. And if that's the decision that they arrived at, then I support it. And I also think that this is not going to be a traditional bowl season. They wouldn't have gotten the festivities and the time or family or the typical things that come with a bowl experience. So, as I said, I support the decision that they chose, and I feel like they earned the right to make that decision, whichever way they went.
Then flipping over to signing day, I'm looking at the signing list, and there's just tons and tons of defensive backs in the class. Is that your bias as a defensive back yourself, with somebody coaching there, or is that a real need that you felt that you had to hammer this year?
I think if we didn't learn anything else about our defense this year, it's that we have to have available people in the back end. And that was something that this year, or really going into this year, we put a premium on. We've got some guys that are either finishing their careers or towards that, and then we have some young guys that are coming up. So it was important to continue to provide that room or those rooms with some depth. We also play with five of them on the field in our base defense. So you want to get as many as you can that have ability as far as the way the game's played in space, and then some you take with the mindset of knowing that as they grow, as they develop physically, and as they get older, they may grow into another position. So it was important to have some variety, and it was also important to have guys that you've seen that are playing in space, you've seen them compete, and you've seen them cover.
Where do you anticipate some of those guys starting out position wise? I know it plays out over time with how they grow and stuff like that, but do you have spots in mind for them to starting out here?
Not really. You know, one of the things that when you take some of these kids, obviously, when we have a break here, when we come back, see how things shake out and what we have on our roster, the first step to me is us as coaches going through and looking at each player that's already on our team and answering the question, what can they do? We don't, to me, it does us no good to talk about what any player can't do. We need to know what they can do, and we need to distribute those names across the board. And then as we look at the new guys, take a look at them and say, what can they do? And then I think you fill it in, you give them a starting point, and then in training in the offseason and spring ball, they have an opportunity to do a lot of different things. And I think that it's important that we give those guys the opportunity to begin where they are most naturally suited. And then over time, you've got to create, develop, and present roles for guys, particularly now, where this age in football, with all the different things that are out there for guys that, you know, if they don't feel like they're a part of a program here or somewhere else, then there's ways that they can go to other places. I think it's important that you create roles for people and you give them opportunities to do things they do well. So we'll start at a point and give guys an opportunity to do what we feel like or what they feel like they do best. And then from there, we'll see what they naturally do best and put them in those spots.
Thank you.
Mike Barber.
Yeah, Justin, I'm curious. You had such a unusual kind of first year with not having spring ball, and I I know you're not a guy who's looking for excuses, but I'm curious if you could maybe summarize the impact of being a first-time coordinator and not getting spring and a normal fall and a normal roster to kind of put your stuff in.
And on top of that, following up Bud Foster. So basically, it was just like how you draw it up, like exactly what you want. No, I think I'm not. I own every bit of our performance. There are no excuses. There's no blaming, no complaining. Um, what I look back at and see is that spring is a really important time. We all know that, but it's such an important time for your players to bond and develop with their coaches and each other. And then it's a time, as Andy was just talking or alluding to his question, that you get a chance to experiment with what guys can do, not with so much your X's and O's, but what guys can do. You get to put them in different spots so you get a feel for it. And we missed out on that. And then in fall camp, usually you're seeing what you got from spring, how guys have developed in the summer when they're with the strength staff, and if they are building on what they did in the spring or if there's something else that you need to do. And it obviously, when you miss out on that, that now makes it to where basically what our season was, as we got through the COVID, through the injuries, and we had a somewhat normal rotation of guys we could play, it was like spring ball, where you're getting all of that within a season. And each Saturday, obviously, it's more important than a scrimmage. But it was like you're getting a scrimmage to see. In spring, you evaluate your scrimmages and say, this is how this guy's developed and come along. So we can continue doing this, or he needs to be doing that. And that's really what we had this season. And we eventually settled in on, we know what these guys can do, and we've got to be able to put them in those spots. The difficult thing is week to week, it's a different challenge with whatever type of offense you're playing or with who the offense, their feature players are, where they're trying to get the ball. So it was, I've said this before, but it was the most challenging experience that I've ever had as a worker or as an adult, short of a tragedy. And I think we learned a lot about ourselves. We learned a lot about our guys. And then by the end of the year, I think we played our best ball the last game of the season, which is encouraging. That doesn't cover up for the other things that happened throughout the season. They are what they are. And, again, I own all of that. But guys improved. They bought in. We've developed, I believe, a little bit of a culture on the defensive side of the ball. And the greatest thing was that at the end, last game of the year, guys played hard for each other.
I'm curious, a couple of the guys mentioned the reads being a little more complicated, the gap fits being a little more complicated. Obviously, they, in time, picked it up. Looking back, and it's always easy to look back, do you wish you had put some of that stuff in, I guess, slower because of how disjointed the year was? Or looking back, was that the right thing to do because now you are kind of where you are?
I think with hindsight being 2020, you could always second guess it. I mean, I think there's elements of that. The complexity piece of it, I think, is really, and those guys, we've talked about it privately or individually. It wasn't so much complex as it was just different than what they'd done in the past. And once they learned it, the last 2-3 games of the season, there wasn't any difference. And in Miami also, the game where we played pretty well, I felt like. It was just new. And had we had a spring ball, had we had a fall camp, those things probably wouldn't have seemed so complex. In fact, a couple of those guys that I talked to, they were like, this is easier. This is not more complex. This is easier than what we were doing in some ways. So there's elements of that. But the other part of it is with what we needed to be able to do based on what our D linemen did well, based on what our linebackers did well, and our secondary, we couldn't do the things that we've done here in the past as much. We had to be able to try to blend it all and tie it all together. And when you do that, there's inevitably going to be people that have to do things that it's either somewhat new to them or that they haven't done, or else you're going to not have a coordinated defense. And I just was watching before I came in here to do this, cut-ups from the season and looking back at things. And there's going to be a really hard look in the mirror at me personally, at looking at myself of, if I was given every one of the variables all over again, what would I have done? And I like to believe I'm my own harshest critic, and I'm going to be very critical of myself. and hopefully we'll be able to use that going forward. And if we can do that and it helps our kids and it makes our team better, then this year has value.
Thank you.
Norm?
Hey, Justin. Justice has made it clear that he has no interest in coming back for his 35th year of eligibility, having you guys outfitted with a walker or a cane. But I was wondering about Rayshard and Jared, if those are guys that have expressed interest in coming back. And I know it's ultimately their decision, but maybe if there are guys that you might even lobby to try to get them back.
Well, I mean, there will definitely be lobbying for those two. I want those two on my team, whatever my team is, whether it's football or whether it's selling ice cream. I want those guys on my team. But for them, they're both ready to relax, enjoy their family, and take some time. And I think that that's exactly what they need. That's exactly what they deserve and what they should do. And when you have time to make that decision, time to talk it over with your family, time to step away from it, then you make a clear decision. And for both of them, they know that the arms are wide open if they want to come back. And I would love for them to be back. Now, I might have to put my recruiter hat on towards the end of this break and try to help that out. But if they want to come back, then they would do it for the right reasons. If they don't want to come back, then it would be also for the right reasons. Those two guys, since they've stepped foot in the door, have given everything that they have to this program and to their teammates. And I respect them so much, love them for it, and am so appreciative that they were here. I'd love them back, but that's going to be a decision with them and their families, and I respect it either way.
Devin Taylor might be in a little bit different situation, being that it's his first year in you guys' program. Has he expressed desire to come back, or same type deal?
Yeah, I mean, Dev is very similar because I think by the time you've played that many years of college football at any level, it's a lot. But with Dev, he got here late July, if I believe, maybe early August, and he was in Zoom meetings on his own. He had to isolate or quarantine. And then Duke week, he ends up going out. And when he got back for BC, you know, all of a sudden he's playing safety out of necessity. And really throughout the year, every day for the first week or two that he was playing was like almost brand new teaching for him. And then over time, I think we saw that he settled in and developed into a quality player for us. In my own opinion, it would be beneficial for him to spend an off season here. He's got to know his teammates. He's much more comfortable. He's a quiet guy by nature anyways, but he's got a great personality. He's very mature, and he saw the benefit that he brought to this program. Would love to have him back for it. Again, another one that a decision with he and his family that they'll make, but he also knows that we got open arms. We welcome him back anytime, so hopefully they'll make that choice.
And since he's local for me, the kid from Virginia Beach that you got ECU too, what did you see in him that was so attractive? Just kind of a scouting report on what he can do for you in the linebacker spot.
I really saw a big athlete. I mean, he came for a junior day, one of the last ones, maybe the last one we had before COVID shut down everything and put us in a dead period. And like we got the new coaches got a chance to see him and meet him, and you could just see that this is a guy who is a bigger person but has the movement skills of a smaller person. And then kind of just looking at the linebacker position for us, we need to have some young guys that are coming in that can give us some versatility. You know, we've got some guys right now, but they're getting older. And for him, he's a guy that playing out there in the 757, you've got to be athletic. Just about every game is played in space. He's doing that. We have a relationship with the high school coach. I've known the high school coach there since I was at UVA Wise. And then with Tavion having a good run for us, a couple other guys that way back, Steve DeMassey going all the way back out there that I played with, speak very highly of him. Great kid, great personality, and the type of guy that historically Virginia Tech has had in the program that we have every incentive to do right by him, to give him an opportunity to create roles for him and to create a good experience so that he'll then go back and help us out there.
Do you see him sort of initially spotting as like a nickel type, or is he a backer, or where do you kind of see him? You said he's got some versatility. I didn't know if you.
Yeah, we see him as one of those inside two to start off, and from there, the thing about those guys is that we got to play with it a little bit this year, but those guys, they play there, they bump out, play a little bit in space. They're blitzers, they're cover guys, they're man-to-man coverage guys sometimes, and then if you have some time to play with systems or to get into some looks that you like, particularly on third downs, then you have an opportunity to put those guys on the edge or to have a couple of them in there playing coverage, blitzing, disguising. So we feel like he can bring us some of that with his versatility. And then any time that your linebacker position can play man coverage on tight ends, that helps everything. And running backs, that helps everything because now you can use DBs as blitzers, you can use DBs in extra coverage zones, or you can play man defenses that allow you to either get after the passer or to get double teams if you need them somewhere else. And we feel like that versatility at that spot helps us a lot.
Is making further inroads with coaches in the 757 a goal for you guys, a recruiting goal? Look, COVID creates issues for everybody. You can't go see these guys. I get it. Does that kind of bump up on the agenda when you guys can finally get out and go see some people to maybe try to visit some of those guys and get to know them a little bit more? I know you know some of those guys from your past lives, but I just didn't know if that was something you wanted to further establish.
Yeah, I think that's the intention across the whole state. I know before COVID shut us down, Coach Fuente had a plan for us to hit every school in Virginia, have all the coaches spend time in Virginia to get out there and go do that. And then obviously we want to win the state, and the state has become much more populated with schools coming in since when I played. I know there were some, but a lot more now. And the most important thing we can do is do right by the ones we have on our roster. If we help them go from young men to grown men, we help them get degrees, we give them a good experience, and we equip them for what they need on the field, in the classroom, and socially, and then they go back, they do the best job. They go back and talk about their experience, and they are probably more impactful in recruiting their peers than we are. So if we can do that, along with the coaches that are out there continuing to build those relationships, to keep it transparent, to be open and honest, and to understand with any coaches, not just in Virginia, but there's always coaches that are going to want you to take guys that you're not sure you can take, whether it be numbers, whether it be this or that. And then with us, that we may look at a lot, and a coach may have a guy that you see, and for whatever reason, it doesn't turn out the way that you or they would like it. And you got to be open and honest about that. I think that's really important, and that's something that's important to all of us. We understand how important it is to recruit this state, to get the best ones here, and then to treat them really well and to do well by them so that they'll go and help us.
Amen.
Mike Nislett.
Yeah, Justin, I wanted to ask you about some different guys. First, Justin Fuente said Divine Diablo's not coming back. He gave kind of a touching kind of tribute to what he's brought. What is to you? What has Divine meant, and what has he meant to this defense?
Oh man, Divine Diablo. If he's not the best human being I've ever met in my life, he's in a category of like 3. He's one of the best people that if you meet him, he'll be one of the best people you ever meet in your life. He worked a couple summers ago at the rec center out in Christiansburg as a part of a curriculum for him with his school. And the guys out there that talked about how he worked, like it was what they said about him was what we see every day, but it's awesome to know that that's who he is everywhere. And the way he took on that job, he was a coach on the field. He was the example for the other players, young and old, to follow with his work ethic, with his unselfishness, with how quickly he learned things, with his communication, with doing anything that was asked of him to the best of his ability. And if he didn't do it well, he'd be the guy after practice that would be working until he did it well. And he did that every day that I was around him. And after he got his interception, I was hoping so bad the other night that that'd be our last play on defense so he could finish it out that way. But I gave him a hug, And I told him I loved him, and like I had to like kind of pull back so I didn't tear up because like I mean the guy is everything you want as a player and as a human being, and he trusted us too. You know, there were some people that were kind of talking to him about maybe he should have gone last year. You know, maybe that would be the deal, and we had a good conversation about. I feel like my own opinion that would be better for you, and Coach Fuente was a part of that, and he trusted us. And we meant that, and I think that he's put himself in a better position. And for him, he's the type of guy that you want everybody that was in his presence to understand how he got to be who he was. He wasn't born, he was born with a great heart, but he wasn't born a great player. He wasn't born a physical specimen. He's got natural gifts for sure, but he worked his butt off in every single way to get everything that he's gotten. And I mean, he is what Virginia Tech is about.
And then a guy I asked about throughout the year and just could never get healthy with Jermaine Waller. How tough was this year on him? Physically, I guess had multiple injuries. You know, was kind of dealing with. Got on the field, had to come off twice. You know, what did he go through this year? And do you feel like he'll be able to kind of get past it here in the next couple of months and be full go for next year in the spring?
Jermaine Waller's a warrior. He's a warrior. I knew in 2018 when we played at Pitt, Jermaine Waller had to play some, and when he went in the game, Pitt was going right at him. And it didn't turn out too well. Most of the times they went at him, and I know in talking to him after that game, he was rock solid. Some people that can ruin him for a career, especially at that position. And he was the same guy as if he would have been if he got 3 or 4 picks in that game. And I knew then we've got something in the mental makeup. And then last year, seeing his development and growth into this year, it was unfortunate. You know, the North Carolina game, it was like that was just such a unique circumstance with the DBs and with what we had available and didn't have. And he was right there. He was ready to step on the field. And the guy really hadn't had a chance to practice or prepare since like July, August. But he was working. He was working with the strength staff, working with the training staff. He wasn't able to put the pads on and go practice, but he was ready. And he went out and he gave everything he had. And unfortunately, it set him back a little bit. And as you said, a couple games that he tried. I mean, he was out there. He was ready. But I think between the conversations with Coach Smitty, with Coach Fuente, with Mike Goforth, with me, he trusts us. And he knows that we want him to get fully healthy, that we know what he's about, we know who he is, and we love every bit of it. And he's a guy that if he can get back to being fully healthy, which I am asking me, not a doctor, but I think he'll be fine and be able to get back. And when that's the case, not only is he going to be a great testament to perseverance, but he's also going to be a leader. I mean, he's a natural-born leader. He doesn't say much, but what he does say is no nonsense. And you can trust what he says. He trusts what we say. And I think the story's going to end really well for him.
So you recommended to pull him back a little bit just so he didn't kind of hurt himself more at the end of the year, just not risk it?
And not even so much that. It was that, it was going to be the same song and dance. And it was not just my decision. It wasn't actually, I didn't have anything to do with the decision. It was him listening to his body and knowing that if he kept going out there, which mentally he could, he was mentally strong enough to keep going and trying it, but he knew that it was, or at least he felt like it was probably going to be, he would take 2 steps forward, 1 or 2, 3 steps back, and it was going to be the same thing because he just didn't have enough time where he could physically get ready for what a season demands. But he was here, he was around his teammates, he was there, he was supportive, he was communicating, he was listening, he was learning. And I'm sure that he was doing a lot of supporting outside of the building that we didn't see. And then he was right in the locker room after the game the other night. He made a point to be in there and to be able to celebrate with his teammates because that's the type of guy he is. But I know that he's hungry to get fully healthy, to have a chance to prepare and get his body ready for what it takes and then come do it.
Well, and with him sidelined, you had Dorian Strong. You had to rely on him, a freshman. Came out of nowhere kind of, recruiting-wise and lands with you guys, but then starts almost half the season. What can you say about him as a true freshman and how he played, and then just what you see for the future for him.
Yeah, I mean Dorian is a great kid with a great family. You know, we in meeting them through the recruiting process, you could see that he had a good structure around him, and you also can see that physically he's got some tools, but he needs to develop some. And that was kind of the thought as he was coming in was that when he can develop physically, he's gonna be almost a specimen, so to speak. His dad is an actual bodybuilder. I mean, dad is like really yoked. And you saw length, you saw athleticism, you saw a guy that at the camp we had him at, he was playing DB and he played wide receiver. He did both well. And you saw a great kid. I mean, he was a great kid. He was awesome to be around, awesome to talk to, and fun to spend time with. So it was very encouraging this year when he stepped out there. Really, the first thing that you saw was it's a true freshman. He's still trying to learn a lot about the game, and that's a tough position to do it at. But he has very good, his length is good, his speed is good, and his ball skills, his radius and being able to play the ball is good. And he's a willing tackler. He's not fearful. So with that, I think the important thing is that he understands that he accomplished a lot this year, but there's a lot left. And the last thing I told him in the locker room was that, hey, man, you had a great year. It was awesome to see, but you've always got to stay humble and stay hungry. That's the biggest thing is be humble and be hungry. If you'll do that, then you'll continue to develop, and I think it's going to be the relationship he has with Coach Smitty is a good one, and guys like Jermaine Waller will be really good. Guys like Jamari Connor will be really good to help him continue to work and grow and develop. And I think he'll watch this season and say, I did some good things, but there's a lot more I could have done, and I want to be able to do that.
Thanks.
Aaron?
Hey, Justin, Coach Fuente said earlier today that it was really a tough challenge to balance the need for practice, which you touched on earlier. The guys needed the practice, but also the rest during the 9 weeks. Are you encouraged that some of the best quarters of defense we saw this year were a couple quarters against Clemson, a game against Virginia, where the guys seem to have been rested?
Yeah, it's definitely encouraging. You know, I mean, for me, looking back at the Clemson game, that during the bye week prior to that, that's when I kind of felt like these guys are really turning a corner, not the corner, but turning a corner towards the buy-in or the investment to playing really, really hard for each other. It was like that things started to click with that. And then obviously getting a bye week to be able to recharge is helpful. But I think that even though one of the things that I found interesting was defensively, we feel like we played all right against Clemson. Guys definitely played really hard. But the final score of that game was the same final score as the Duke game last year. And the Duke game last year and the Clemson game this year, as far as there's no moral victories, but when you assess what just happened, when you watch the film, guys had a different feeling about it. And, you know, you don't want to always be happy or whatever with a 45-10 loss, but when you see that it was a battle, guys played hard and played well, caused some things to happen, then that propelled us forward into the last week of the season where guys continue to build on that, and that is very much encouraging to answer your question. And I think now it's taking the good parts and the parts where we need to get better, and it's showing the capability, what we are capable of, but also showing on the flip side of that what we can be capable of, and where the difference is consistency. And that's that consistently how we prepare mentally and physically, and consistently how we prepare week to week when we're in a season. But I with Coach, talking about balancing the practice, I don't know that there is any type of blueprint or a manual on that. And I thought our guys responded really well. I think they gave us what we asked them to give us, but it was good. At the end, it was good to be able to see guys finish strong. We talked all week about finish the race, and they did that.
Andy, you had a follow-up?
And Justin, just looking at your defensive end signees you've had the last couple of years, it seems like you got a lot bigger with those positions. Cole Nelson's a big guy. Mateus Carroll is is like that too. His dad's like 6'9". I don't know if he has any eligibility left. But, what do you think of those two and how they fit into what you're trying to do from that end spot?
Well, Matthias, he actually goes by Stretch. So to talk about the length, but with Stretch, in the recruiting process, every single time we talked to him, it's like he was taking a break from work or he was getting ready to go to work. Like all he did was work, and he worked doing jobs that were really servant jobs at a grocery store, or supermarket. His family got to come here for a junior day. They got to meet our new coaches, and it was a good blend. And he was very meticulous in picking the school. And he's been also very vocal for recruiting the right type of people here with us as a part of the class or as a part of going forward. And we're very excited about the maturity that he brings and physically with what his ceiling can be as he continues to develop. He's a smart kid, and he's a hard worker. And he all he wants to do is come and go to work. And Cole, it was very similar. I mean, in talking with him, when I first really became, obviously the film, watching Cole, but when I first really became attracted to Cole was talking about his mom. His mom worked to put herself through school. And then she basically is self-made in every way with what she's become. So he's seen that. And he talked about how that's an example for him in the way he wants to live his life and what he wants to do and what college is about for him. And to hear young people talk like that, you know that it's the right type of people, and you know that that's the mindset that you want in your program. And then with those guys, obviously the physical capacity that they have with their size and their length. And you just see, I mean, the type of year Amari Barno had this year is indication that length is good. Length helps you get off blocks. Length helps you affect the plays. You cover more space, and you're able, if you can multiply the number of guys you have with that type of length, then you're able to cover more ground and defend more areas with obviously the same amount of people. So that's been a point of emphasis, and we are excited about both those guys.
Thank you.
Andrew?
Hey, Coach, you're from Dickinson County, so I guess getting Jaden Keller, I mean, it's kind of like getting one in your own backyard. What's it like to get a guy like Jaden on your defense?
Well, we can have interesting conversations about State Street or about Billy Jack's tattoo or Bristol Motor Speedway, like different things that I know that he knows, so that's been good. But from down there, his high school coach, known him for a while, and had some guys from that high school that I coached at UVA Wise and understand the makeup of those guys. Then Coach Lechtenberg did a good job with them. And then the kid, he came up, another one that came up with his mom for a visit back, I can't remember which junior day it was, but another one that's an awesome kid. All he wants to do is go to work, and he's got a good physical capacity. I mean, there was a video of him from the Arby's Classic down there in the dunk contest that was impressive. Watching him run with the ball is impressive, and then watching him on defense is impressive. So he's a guy we really liked his natural ability and loved his willingness to compete, the type of program pedigree that he has, and, you know, one of those guys that you get him here and see what he does well, and you start to build a position or a role around that and carve a niche for himself.
I guess a follow-up question off of that, too, is what do you think of his hit ability? I know the first game of the year, like, he had a completely clean hit, knocked the kid's helmet off at Dobbins Bennett. I'm guessing y'all have seen that play. Are y'all excited about the hit power he's got? And I'm guessing you probably talked to him about Powell's, too.
Yeah, Pals, I forgot about that. I can't believe I did. That's shame on me. But, yeah, I mean, explosion, when you see kids that are explosive on film, like for me, when you're evaluating defensive prospects, everybody's going to have good plays on their highlights. You know, you need to see, are they accelerating through angles that they have? Are they getting their body on people when they tackle them? Are they hesitant? Are they grabbing a body part and holding on? And with him, you see that explosive capability. And I think that on that play we did see, but in every way, he's a quick decision maker when the ball's in his hands too, which is encouraging. So for him, we're excited to get to work with him. It's very exciting.
I'll ask another one if nobody's going to ask. Josh Fuga, Guy who didn't get to play as a freshman. A couple opposing coaches mentioned him as somebody that caught their eye. What did you see from him this season?
A guy that was coming into it as, he's very passionate and he wants to be really good and he plays with that type of passion and that type of energy. He's a guy that, as he develops his skills, and he's big too. So having a guy in there that's hard to move is good. What I see is that he did a nice job for us, and he has plenty more that he can do. Would like to see him continue to develop his twitch and his explosion, his ability to fight off of blocks. But is a guy that, when you see him around his teammates, he wants to be really good. He wants them to be really good. He's very smart. He's making all kinds of calls and talking to them up there up front. So that's a plus. But he's a guy that he wants to do the work, and he enjoys that part. So I'm excited to see where that work takes him.
And Amari Barno had less than 2 months before getting thrown in there at defensive end, and then is one of your most effective pass rushers. Are you surprised that he got it that quickly and was able to be that effective? I mean, with just such little prep time at defensive end?
I don't know that surprised would be the word. I think we could tell. We saw last year. I know in bowl practice last year, he was playing linebacker, and he chased down a quarterback run, and I was kind of looking around with bug eyes to see did anybody else just see that. And the person I see is Coach Fuente with the same bug eyes I had, looking around as if to say, did anybody just see that? So we knew he had that type of physical ability. I didn't know whether or not he would be as productive as he was this year that quick, but as he started to come along, you could tell that he was in the right spot for himself and that he was coming into his own. And the thing about him is that he played like he was a warrior too. I mean, he played through nothing major, but he was just at that position. It was a new toll on his body physically, and he played through it, and he was always there, always ready. Like, unbelievable to see. Looking forward to see him continue to come into his own and develop at that spot.
And one last one for me. The linebackers behind Ashby, with Dax and Allen, was it tough for them this season? They seem to have a lot of ups and downs. I mean, Allen missed a couple games, kind of rotated him a little bit. Just how you handled those other guys and how you felt they did this season.
The other guys, as in Allen and Dax, or?
Yeah, Allen and Dax.
Well, I think that they did a good job this season, and they developed as the year went on. They steadily improved, and in Allen's case, it was for him. I mean, there's a lot of things going on with him. He had a child born, so there was that, and he was in a spot where he was doing things that he had done really well, and then he would have a time where he'd be out for a little bit. Dax was playing the Will and the Mike spot, and Rook was steady, but Rook was playing a lot of snaps, and then throughout the week we were trying to get him the reps he needed, but also get him the rest he needed. So I think, my personal opinion is those guys did a really good job. As the year went along, they settled in to their roles and their jobs, and we made it a point of emphasis to try to take things and take them off of their plates rather than put them on their plates. And, in Dax and Allen's case, they both were playing a good amount of special teams, and Rook ended up playing a good amount of special teams also. So there was a lot going for them, and in the case of Rook, he's a coach on the field. Dax is a coach on the field, and Allen spent a lot of extra time meeting and learning because he wants to become a coach on the field, and he developed a lot mentally also. So the work that they put in was encouraging to see, and their production increasing over the course of the year was also encouraging to see.
Did you give Allen any tips on parenting? You just had a newborn as well.
He and I have talked a lot about parenting. I told him, get sleep when you can, and I think he's understanding. He knew he's got younger siblings, so he knew a little bit, but I told him it's a little bit different when at the end of the day you can't give the child back to its rightful owner when you are the rightful owner, and he's learning that. But I know that it's been awesome to see him into that role because he's super proud of it and he wants to be a great dad, which I think is awesome.
All right, Coach, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time today.
Appreciate it, gentlemen.